Here are some of the strangest two-headed animals ever. Number 11. Cat. How crazy would it be to see a cat with two faces in real life? For example, meet Frank and Louie, sometimes referred to as Frank and Louie. This two-faced cat hasn't only survived, but he stood the test of time, having lived for 15 years until he passed away in 2015. Known as Janus cats, named after the Roman god, two-faced cats are a thing that sometimes happens, as rare as they may be. When they do happen, they typically experience all kinds of health problems that lead to a short life. But Frank and Louie managed to make it an astounding 15 years. Frank and Louie were born with one brain but had two faces, two mouths, two noses, and three blue eyes. He had only one functional mouth, however, with the other face being born without a functional bottom jaw. In this special case, Frank and Louie survived because while they had only one brain, they had separate organs. I'm not really sure when we're supposed to refer to an animal as singular or plural. Is it when two brains are involved? Or as early as two faces are involved? What do you guys think? Number 10. Calf. Here's the definition of a polycephaly. The state or condition of having more than one head. Used in a sentence. Stan and Brandy were shocked when they saw that their cow gave birth to a calf who appeared to be in a state of polycephaly. Okay. All of this is our way of saying two farmers in Kentucky had a two-headed calf named Lucky on their farm back in 2016. And not to engage in an exercise in semantics, but technically, Lucky has two faces and not two heads. For it to truly be a case of polycephaly, each head would have to have his or her own personality. In the case of Lucky, the faces tend to act in unison. So I don't know what they'd call this guy in the scientific community. Polyphacerus? Despite having two mouths, four eyes, and two noses, there's reason to believe she has only one brain. Like we said before, she moved her mouths in unison when she's being fed. But no matter what category you file this one under, it's just strange and fascinating at the same time. Number 9. Lizard. Imagine someone you don't really like. Now imagine being literally attached to that person. How much would that suck? Well, back in 2010, a bizarre two-headed bobtail lizard was discovered in Perth, Australia. And yep, apparently the two heads couldn't stand one another. The bigger head was constantly trying to attack the smaller one. To make matters even more awkward, both heads were vying for control over the back legs. How does that work? Despite their differences, this lizard had great health, something that definitely impressed the researchers. Also known as the shingleback lizard, bobtails are known for giving live birth rather than laying eggs like many reptiles. Maybe that had something to do with the rare genetic mutation. Who knows? While it's been hard to find any recent updates on this particular two-headed lizard, if history tells us anything, chances are it didn't survive very long. Number 8. Porpoise. In 2017, a group of Dutch fishermen managed to make a very unusual haul. They caught what's believed to be the first ever case of a dicephalic harbor porpoise. Unfortunately, it was dead on arrival, as the usual case. Of course, they still snapped a few photos and threw it back into the ocean. However, it turns out that they probably should have kept it because it could have proved to be valuable to researchers, as very little is known about conjoined twins in cetaceans. Researchers from the University of Rotterdam speculated that the porpoise probably didn't survive very long after birth. With the dorsal fin very underdeveloped, they figured there's no way it lasted very long in the wild. Despite being a very common cetacean in northwestern Europe, there are very few cases of twinning in harbor porpoises, and this is the first time anyone's found actual evidence of one with two heads. Number 7. Turtle. On the morning of July 31st, 2012, Simon Biltz made a pretty interesting discovery on Jupiter Island, Florida. Simon found a two-headed turtle hatchling. Biltz, a biologist with Ecological Associates, was excavating a sea turtle nest to learn about their reproductive success rate. And boom, just like that, he found a two-headed baby turtle alive and seemingly well. Two-headed baby turtles aren't exactly a rare thing. For example, a University of Central Florida intern found a baby turtle back in 2017. Having two heads is a bad thing for sea turtles since it puts a lot of unnatural strain on their organs. a big reason why adult sea turtles with 2 heads isn't a thing. Sadly, most of them don't make it out. But really, any hatching has trouble making it out. The chances for survival for any hatchling is low. According to the Sea Turtle Conservancy, anywhere from 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 10,000 infant turtles make it to adulthood. Number 6. Deer. In May of 2018, a mushroom hunter in Minnesota stumbled upon a stillborn 2-headed fawn that's been described as extremely rare. The mushroom hunter decided to bring the fawn to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Of the tens of millions of fawns born annually, there are abnormalities happening in the wild we have no clue about. The results that were found by the researchers were interesting to say the least. The fawns shared a liver but had separate hearts, spleens, and gastrointestinal tracts. They also found that their lungs never breathed air. Their anatomy indicated that the fawns would never have been viable. However, they were still found groomed, suggesting that their mom tried to take care of them anyways after delivery. Conjoined twins occur in the human population at a rate of between 1 in 50,000 to 1 in 100,000 births, but the process that leads to the condition in both humans and animals is still unknown. Number 5. Pig. Back in 2017, a farmer in China amazed everyone when he showed off his 2-headed pig. His tiny little piglet had 2 mouths, 2 noses, and 3 eyes. Born on a farm in Luzhu, a small town in the Sichuan province of China, the piglet attracted a lot of visitors. Some of these visitors even offered the farmer cash for the piglet, an offer he refused since his son wanted to keep it. The piglet captivated the area's attention, even though apparently 2-headed pigs aren't exactly a rare occurrence in China. In 2015, for example, a 2-headed pig was left outside of a Buddhist temple. In 2017, another 2-headed pig was born near Beijing. It also happened in 2016, 2014, and probably any other year. However, that still doesn't take away from how strange each case is, even if the rarity isn't there. Number 4. Snake. If someone were to take the time to survey people and ask them about their worst fears for animals, snakes would probably make the list a lot. So, the prospect of a 2-headed snake sounds like a nightmare to us. Many of nature's 2-headed anomalies don't last very long. However, there are some exceptions out there. Take Medusa, the 2-headed Honduran milk snake. Born in Florida in 2011, Medusa is still alive and kicking. However, it's still a strange snake. It's not just the whole having an extra head thing that's weird. It's because that the head actually fights each other for food. This isn't really that surprising, as Honduran milk snakes will actually eat its own kind. So, how'd the owner solve the problem? Yeah, he cuts mice into 2 and gives them both halves. Aye. In 2018, a boa constrictor was found that had 2 heads and 2 hearts, something that's extremely rare, as most animals with 2 heads share the same organs. Basically, this snake appears to be twin snakes in one outer skin, as its head moves separately. Veterinarians were fascinated by this snake, and we're not gonna lie, we are too. Number 3, bird. What's the weirdest thing you've ever seen in your backyard? Okay, one involving animals. Chances are you all have a tough time topping April Britt, who noticed a 2-headed bird causing a ruckus in her backyard. While relaxing in their home in Northampton, Massachusetts, Britt and her husband noticed a lot of chirping in the backyard. They went outside and discovered a baby cardinal with 2 heads and 3 beaks. They were able to take a few pictures as the baby bird was just laying on the ground trying to survive. However, the baby bird probably didn't make it. The next morning, the couple couldn't find the baby cardinal anywhere, and if we've learned anything yet, it's that animals with 2 heads have a slim chance at a long life. The baby bird seemed to have been abandoned by its mother and was having a hard time feeding itself. Number 2, shark. Sharks are scary enough with 1 head, but a shark with 2 heads? Come on! People keep finding 2-headed sharks all over the world. There have been several examples of 2-headed sharks over the years. Take, for instance, back in 2008, Christopher Johnson reeled in a pregnant blue shark from the Indian Ocean. When they cut the shark open, they found a 2-headed baby shark. 2-headed sharks aren't a one-time fluke, but it should not be happening all the time. Fishermen off the coast of Florida also caught a bull shark who had a 2-headed baby. The prevalence of 2-headed sharks are pervasive enough to prompt Cambridge to do a study on 2-headed sharks. They focused on blue sharks and speculated that the reason for the deformities probably begin during embryonic development when there's a high number of embryos in the blue shark's uterus. Because of the very close proximity in which the embryos develop, when an embryo starts twinning, it just may be too crowded to separate completely. Number 1. Todd Ray Collection. And the award for the largest collection of two-headed animals goes to Todd Ray. We actually mentioned him already, as he was the owner of the snake who fought over meals. The Grammy Award-winning producer / dicephalic animal collector has traveled the globe and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on two-headed animals. He has a two-headed snake, we had mentioned, a two-headed bearded dragon, a two-headed goat, a two-headed king snake, a two-headed turtle. Let's just say he has more than 20 two-headed pets. I'm guessing deuces are wild in any card game with this guy? He even owns a number of preserved specimens, such as a two-headed kitten and the skull of a two-headed calf. Ray seems to be very caring and responsible of a pet owner and makes sure that his two-headed pets get the care and treatment they need. Having once worked with the likes of Mick Jagger and the Beastie Boys, Ray is quite confident in his place in the Guinness Book of World Records. To show how much of an enthusiast he is, he said, quote, "I have the largest collection of two-headed animals in the world, and there will never be another person who tops it. I don't care how long the planet exists." Whoops. Here's what's next. That went viral about a deep-sea fisherman sharing some photos of some of the weird creatures that end up in his nets. This laughing octopus was one of them, but the post did not include any descriptions or details, only the photos. Do any of you know what this thing is? Have you ever seen one? Number 1.